So to have a Qur'an that is authentic is quite amazing. That's one. And to have hadith for which you have the chain of transmission is, again, amazing. And out of these 600,000, you take the best, like the cream of the cream, and you end up with 10,000. And still 10,000, that's huge. So it should be noted that this effort of compilation is unique in the sense that no historical event prior to the digital age has been documented with such dedication and precision. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So in chapter 3, we finished with the first section on how to establish a scientific paradigm. Now I'll go to the establishment of an Islamic paradigm. So section 2, the origin of the Islamic message. So in my childhood, I never had to worry about Islam. And to be honest, given the image of Islam that was portrayed by the media, I didn't even want to know about it. It's only during my postgraduate studies, when I left France, I went to the US, through my students and friends, that I encountered a more appealing image of Islam. The image I keep in my mind, like as a postgraduate student in the US, you have to teach undergraduates. It's one possibility. That's one way how to finance your studies. So I used to teach undergraduates. And I had one Muslim student who every single class used to bring me an apple. It's like the cliche image. The student comes, puts an apple on the table and says, "It's for you, it's a gift, take it." And every time he used to do this. Really nice students, mashallah. And it works. It brought a different image of Islam. So it was only after apprehending the potential benefits of being a Muslim later on that I began to explore this religion critically. Whatever the benefits, my first steps was to check the origin of this religion. Someone gave me, I wanted to hang out with these people because we had about the same age. So I wanted to hang out with them. They suggested to go to the mosque. On the top floor of the mosque, the first floor of the mosque, they had a lounge. And we used to hang out. They said, "Okay, you can come here, you can stay, you can just eat with us, play with us, it's all right." So that's how I used to go to the mosque, just to hang out. And soon they gave me a Qur'an. I was like, "Okay, let me read it." And I started reading it, and that looks like the Bible. I don't really understand. It's like, as a physicist, when I have a book, an interesting book, a book in physics, it's classified in chapter sections. Every section is a topic. Every paragraph has an argument. Then you come to the Qur'an and you have verses, and from one verse to another, the topic can change entirely. The tense change, the location changes, the people even that are addressed changes. It's really difficult to make sense of it initially. And it's like, it really looks like the Bible. I saw the same issues. For me, there were still issues in the Bible. So it's like, okay, the text, the revelation for me will not bring me any benefits. Let me focus first on where this message comes from. Like, first I need to trust that message. At the moment I don't trust it, it doesn't make sense. Let me see the source. Who brought it? So I thus started learning about the man behind the message of Islam, the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. But the person is no more. So one can only refer to the legacy that he has left, ﷺ, the writings, the message that is preached, the description left by his family, his friends, and even enemies. So we are confronted with the notion that was raised in the first chapters. Like, how do you trust a man who died more than 1400 years ago? For that purpose, I will proceed as stated in the second chapter. It's like, when faced with the impossibility of accessing the source directly, the Prophet himself, ﷺ, I must evaluate him indirectly. This evaluation will be about the narrations and the descriptions that have been reported about him, ﷺ. The goal is to build an image of his most probable character. Accordingly, the credibility of the spokesperson of Islam, ﷺ, will first be assessed through the evaluation of the historicity of the reported narrations, which will then serve as a basis for evaluating the character of the person, of the Prophet ﷺ. So the first part, a historical account. So I really appreciate the historicity of Islam, and that's, I believe, something that is often overlooked by born Muslim. Being born a Christian, I don't have that historicity anymore. I mentioned it before. It's like after a while, I was even wondering whether Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, really existed or not. Or maybe it was just a pious person that was later glorified and put as a prophet, or even as a godly figure. But there is no such records. So, historical account. In this section, I discuss the historicity of the corpus, which forms the textual basis of the religion. The corpus is comprised of both the Qur'an and Hadith, which corresponds to all the sayings, actions, and moments of life related to the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. So with respect to the Qur'an, from a historical point of view, its verses were written down during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, although they were not compiled yet in a single book. The fact that the Quranic verses were immediately preserved in a written format ensures the initial preservation of the Quranic text. The parchments on which all the Quranic verses were written were then compiled in a single volume and duplicated in large numbers under the reign of Uthman radiallahu anhu, the third caliph, and a close companion to the Prophet ﷺ. So this work of compilation and duplication ensured the perennity of the Qur'an. This explains why, up to this day, the Qur'an can be considered authentic. So here in the book, I refer to a study by Muhammad Azami that he published in 2003, The History of the Quranic Text from Revelation to Compilation. It's a really good book. Within that book, he explains what are the proofs you can take, what are the evidences for the authenticity of the Qur'an, and it's also a response from the accusation against that authenticity, that claim for authenticity. But you can have other studies. I've read recently studies, linguistic analysis of the different codex that were found. And through that linguistic analysis and comparison, it shows pretty convincingly, I would say, that the source of all these codexes, these parchments, is most probably four different, mainly different writings, or four different versions, I would say, that come from a single oral sources. So that's that's another way how to approach the question of authenticity, is through linguistic analysis, and you still end up with at least with four textual sources and one oral source, from which derives these four textual sources. Really interesting, because that really coincides with what we have from the narrations themselves. Like you have one Qur'an, but different ways how to recite it. So it should be noted that in those times, oral transmission was the norm. The transcription of the Qur'an was therefore an exception to the custom. And it is through the remains of these exceptionally early transcriptions that we can, up to this day, appreciate the preservation of the Qur'an as an authentic historical manuscript. By contrast, most of the prophetic narrations were initially solely orally transmitted. It's only in the 3rd century after the death of the Prophet ﷺ that an effort of compilation and classification has been made to safeguard these narratives in writing in order to protect them from further forgery, falsification, or even errors of transmissions. So some figures here involved in this effort of compilations, such as Bukhari, Muslim, At-Tirmidhi, Nasai, Abu Dawood, Ibn Majah, Ibn Hibban, Imam Ahmed, etc. You know these names. You know these names, although they lived centuries before you, because these people dedicated their life to a goal, and you benefit from that objective, from that goal. So these people continue to be known to this day because they have literally dedicated their life to the task. These individuals have each in their own way, set up selection criteria to evaluate each transmitted narration, each hadith. These criteria range from the simple verification that the various people involved in the chain of transmission, the isnad, have met, like the date of birth, death, and places of residence, travel itineraries, up to the evaluation of the social status and character of the different narrators, like social recognition, potential material interest in conveying such and such saying, etc. Moreover, when the same narration is reported multiple times through multiple chains of transmission, it is possible to cross-check the different accounts and verify not only the authenticity of the different versions, but also their syntax. And if you think of this, that seems even crazy. Like someone said something more than 1400 years ago. Another someone else heard it, remembered it, and passed it on to another, and to someone else. And then it was written down. And then by comparing the different writings, because the match is so close, you can analyze, you can study the syntax of what was said initially. And if you continue, if you push these analysis even further, you can even assess the reporter's memory and accuracy, which in turn makes certain narrators prevail over others. That is amazing. Again, as a born Christian, I have the Bible. The Bible, the French version is obviously a translation from a previous source, but that previous source is also a translation, translated by who knows who knows where, in which context. You don't know the person, you don't know the context in which the person lived, you don't know the worldview of that person. All of these affect how you translate something. For example, when you translate the Qur'an, you have different ways to translate it. When you translate, you try to convey an information, but what that information is depends on you. Do you want to convey the literal meaning? Do you want to convey the overall message? Do you want to convey the sonority of the verses? These are different ways how to translate the same source, the same Qur'an. Then on top of it, you add political, economical pressures, different understanding of the world. Of course, all of these will affect the way you translate the text. So to have a Qur'an that is authentic is quite amazing. That's one. And to have hadith for which you have the chain of transmission is, again, amazing. So surely the hadith don't have the same authenticity as the Qur'an, but it's still much better than what I had as a Christian. As a result, this enterprise of hadith compilation allows for the classification of each narration on a probability scale. That's why it becomes scientific. The highest category of classification, Sahih, authentic, and Hasan, good, contain at the end about 10,000 sayings and counters that are directly related to the Prophet ﷺ and his close family members and the companions. So these about 10,000 hadith. Some of them are quite short, one sentence, right? But others can be like few pages long. Like 10,000 hadith, that's huge. You fill up volumes out of it. In total, you have about 600,000 hadith narrations reported. Some of them are weak, some of them we know they are false. And out of these 600,000, you take the best, like the cream of the cream, and you end up with 10,000. And still 10,000, that's huge. So it should be noted that this effort of compilation is unique in the sense that no historical event prior to the digital age has been documented with such dedication and precision. Even today in the digital age, now you're prone to falsification. You can make fake news. So the digital age is not even better anymore. So as a result, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as a historical figure, is the only among the other founders of the other great religions, whose existence is historically undisputed. This work of preservation reached the point where we still have access today to the very own words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as they were uttered. Once the trust in the historicity of the reported accounts is admitted, one can begin to evaluate through the reported words the character of the person itself, of the Prophet alayhi salam. And it is the study of his life, based on what is closest to the truth, which establishes the trust that is necessary to evaluate the religious message itself. So again, I didn't want to read the Qur'an directly. I wanted to know first, where is this Qur'an coming from? The Prophet was reciting it. Let me check who that person is in the first place. How do I know about him? Through the hadith. Let me check the hadith. Now the hadith, okay, have a certain, they can be ranked in terms of authenticity. Let me take the best, and from the most authentic narrations, let me read who the person was. That would be the next step. وجزاك الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.